Fire, a perpetual issue in our vast upland landscapes. But this issue is not new. People have been dealing with fires for centuries in these places. But with longer, warmer dry spells, thanks to climate change, the impacts on habitat, species and people are only likely to increase. Everyone with an interest in our upland landscapes wants to deal with this growing threat, but we need sensible long-term solutions. The National Trust, a large landowner here in the Peak District, has big ambitions to restore habitats and functioning ecosystems.
So over the last couple of decades, we've invested millions in these landscapes. A lot of that investment has gone into revegetating the bare peat. So it's really important we move away from monocultures, and quite often in the upland landscape, we have large expanses of heather and also that tussock forming grass molinia. So what we're aiming to achieve is that mosaic, that diversity of habitats, whether that be trees merging into the bog areas, bog pools, areas of grassland, bracken beds here and there, and also really focusing on re-wetting as well. That's key to these landscapes. They should be wet. Their water table should be very close to the surface in most areas. So we put a whole series of dams in the various erosional gullies that have appeared across the landscape, and that just slows the flow of water off the landscape, and in many cases holds water on that landscape, which is really important for the resilience. And then we plant other plants such as sphagnum, and we know sphagnum absorbs rainwater. So again, that mosaic really does help deal with fire. It sort of breaks up that vegetation across the landscape. But the key important thing that we need to get right is to re-wet these landscapes, make those peat soils resilient. So if we do have a fire, at least those soils are protected for the future.
Resilient landscapes, like those being created by the National Trust, are exactly what we need to cope with the impacts of fire. And we have to remember that fires are not a natural part of the system in the UK. They are almost entirely man-made, either accidentally or on purpose. These landscapes aren't fire adapted, so it's a grave mistake to look to California or Australia, where they use fire to manage habitats. Instead, to understand how to instill fire resilience into these upland landscapes, we need to look around the globe at peatlands. After all, peatlands are wetlands, and wherever you find peatlands, the solution for fire mitigation is to make them wetter. After all, fire and water do not mix.
Our land management is all about making the landscape as complicated as possible. So when you have vast monocultures of heather or molinia, say, both of which are very flammable, a landscape is extremely vulnerable to fire. What we want is something wet, full of sphagnum moss, with those flammable vegetation types, a really minor component of that landscape. So the Met Office has just said that it's likely to be the warmest summer on record. We have experienced the driest spring for 100 years, and we're currently in our 4th heat wave. Now this sphagnum moss, it was not sat in water. You can see not dripping. You can see no drips coming out of it now. But if I give it a squeeze, despite those horrible drought conditions, this plant is still holding water. That's why this plant is so massively important for a functioning blanket bog. If this plant were to cover the surface of all of our peatlands in the Peak District and in the UK, they would be so much less flammable. In Britain, we're used to seeing our upland habitats as open, barren, windswept habitats. And if you go to other countries where we've used these landscapes less intensively, we can see that actually native trees and native scrub are a really important component of those landscapes. So we have huge ambitions here to plant a lot more trees and plant a lot more scrub. Trees are massively important for slowing overland flow, so reducing flood risk, for sequestering carbon, mitigating the impacts of climate change, for supporting lots of different biodiversity. So it's a big enough landscape to have a bit of everything.
Re-wetting and restoring landscapes won't stop all fires from happening, but we know it can reduce the vigour of two of the most flammable plants on these uplands, molinia and heather. Rotational burning of heather actually strengthens heather and means that it starts to dominate the landscape. And molinia too is strengthened by fire. And sheep grazing, rather than reducing molinia, makes it stronger, as sheep don't like to eat it. So we need to move away from management that keeps these two plants as dominant forces in the landscape. Alongside restoration, other actions are needed. 1, to reduce ignitions, and 2, to ensure that when they happen, they're acted upon quickly.
We have a multi-pronged approach to fire risk. We have to think about managing fire risk over multiple different timescales as well as different places and different activities. We do quite a lot of work with the general public to reduce the risk of accidental ignition through, say, barbecues and campfires, that sort of thing. We have some brilliant staff and some really amazing volunteers from the local community who work really hard to educate people that, say, having a disposable barbecue in long grass during high fire risk time is a really bad idea. And what we're finding is that everybody we talk to about their use of barbecues in the countryside genuinely don't understand that it's risky. So just by educating people, we're seeing at Dove Stone that we're having far fewer accidental ignitions. So we have a really excellent relationship with the Fire and Rescue Service. Partnership working is really important, and actually we're starting to fight fires on other land holdings than Dove Stone in the local area now. So we really want our fire response to be bigger than just the RSPB at Dove Stone. We're a part of this landscape, we're a land management part of this wider landscape, and it's important that we play that part and we take responsibility for helping other people put their fires out as well.
Our work to reduce ignitions is proving effective, but there are still ignition sources that threaten the landscape. One of those is management burning. Study after study has shown that management burns getting out of control are a leading cause of fire. In 2025, several fires were caused by management burns getting out of control, and the Fire and Rescue Service had to respond. Preventing ignitions is vital, and that means all ignitions.
We want to change this landscape for the good, for the long term, so that not only will it be more resilient to fire, it will also deliver lots of other public goods. So reduce flood risk, more biodiversity, increase carbon sequestration, and just be a richer place for people to live in and to visit.